The story began with a sudden and unexpected dispute when the leader of the hero's party, Nardo, immediately expelled our main heroine, Eris Fulries. Surprised by the sudden turn of events, Harris thought it might be a joke. However, Naruto's obvious anger did not indicate any trick, as he wanted Oris to disappear from his sight immediately. Passers-by at the scene, observing the heated argument, wondered what could have happened. However, they wisely kept their distance, not wanting to get involved in the conflict, and quickly walked away before the situation escalated. Nardo admitted that Eris's enhancement magic was indeed useful, but considered Eris just a potion that could be easily replaced, further claiming that the party did not need such a burden, in a fit of uncontrollable rage. Nardo even accused Eris of stealing experience points. In this world, killing monsters granted experience points that increased strength, and these points were evenly distributed among group members. Eris realized that they expelled him because they simply wanted more experience for themselves, and when he tried to explain, Nardo paid no attention to his words, declared the dismissal final, and strictly ordered him to leave. Others also kept their distance, hinting that he should just understand the situation and leave. Before finally leaving, Eris asked one last time if they were really satisfied with him leaving the hero's party. But they almost called him persistent, saying that they would finally get rid of such a burden as him. Yura stepped back and moved forward. He thought that this did not need to be explained. It was clear that the party relied on his magic to act, but they rejected him without understanding. Eris thought that for the most part they would eventually come back for him with worried faces, but now he decided not to return. Eris joined the team of heroes to avenge the demon who took his family and to prevent further disasters, but now outside the team his primary task is to get his own life in order. Thinking about the future, he decided to get an adventurer's license. He soon arrived at the guild house and approached the receptionist, who kindly offered her assistance. When Eris said he wanted to become a traveler, she immediately looked at the clock and informed him that he had come just in time for the exam, then asked how he wanted to proceed. He replied that if possible, he would like to take the exam now. She immediately handed him the registration form to fill out, and he quickly wrote his name and profession. A wizard who helps comrades with enhancement magic, a skill he was born with. Did she scan the completed form? She hesitantly asked if he was connected to the group of heroes. Iruz thought about how quickly she recognized him just by his name and job. Although he knew it would cause problems if it became known that he was expelled from the hero party. Reacting quickly, Eris denied any connection, said it was a common name and that he was in no way connected to the group of heroes. Then he slyly asked about the content of the exam to divert her attention. She explained that there were a total of 4 tests. A test of magical power, an aiming test, a practical test, and a final test. She explained that he needed to pass all 4, but he was allowed an unlimited number of attempts and was wished good luck. She led him to the test location. At first, she led him to the room for checking magical power. This would be the first measurement of Aura's magical power since joining the hero squad, and he was confident he could handle it. In the room, on a stand placed on a pedestal, lay a single polished crystal neatly. She placed her hand on it. She demonstrated the test procedure. Touching the crystal would absorb magic and show its power level. Brighter glow meant greater magical power, and dimmer meant less. When the crystal barely glowed under her touch, Oris asked about the passing score. She replied that it was difficult for her level of magical power, but if it glowed a little brighter, it would be considered successful. She also said that even without being an adventurer, she could handle a decent amount of magic, hinting that it shouldn't be very difficult for him, after which Eris firmly placed her hand on the crystal and decided to try anyway. As soon as he touched the surface, it flashed with bright light. It momentarily blinded the person at the reception. Eris decided that the bright light meant he passed the test. When he returned to ask the receptionist about his result, her legs gave way and she fell, causing him to start doubting whether he had made a mistake. She quickly apologized for the unexpected reaction and admitted that she had never seen anything like it before. Taking herself in hand, she focused on Eris's magic, and as he continued to direct his power into the crystal began to heat up to an unbearable temperature. He wondered whether the crystal would withstand this strain or crack, but she assured him that it was durable, as she had never heard of such a thing. To their great surprise, the crystal began to noticeably crack, then immediately split into 2 parts. Seeing this, Eris began to doubt its meaning, and the receptionist fell to the floor again and, trembling, whispered quietly. She did not understand how this could have happened, because the crystal was supposed to withstand the magic even of an S-rank adventurer, and she began to suspect that Eris was really from the hero party. But he immediately dismissed her suspicion and said that common sense suggested that a mage from the hero squad would not become an adventurer. Then he extended his hand to her, helped her up, and most importantly asked about the test results. She assured him that he had undoubtedly passed the test. He apologized for the inconvenience caused and said that due to the broken crystal, further tests could not be conducted for now. But she noted that it was unexpected, and the guild should have anticipated such a result in advance. When she began to examine the broken crystal, she accidentally scratched her hand and started bleeding, and Eris immediately took her hand, noting that it was quite a dramatic wound. He offered to heal her wound with his magic. The wound quickly healed, and she was surprised that Eris, besides magic, also had healing abilities. Usually, it was thought that a mage uses enhancement spells only for attack or defense, and few knew that it involved granting a certain property. He asked without hesitation if it was a problem that he, as a mage, used healing magic, to which she hesitantly replied no. Moreover, he offered to repair the crystal, which surprised her, and she inquired if it was really possible when he began to pour his healing magic into the cracked crystal. The crystal noticeably began to restore itself. Soon it was like new. Seeing this amazing restoration, she thanked him. Oris modestly said that at first it was his fault. He then clarified whether the next evaluation would be a training test of shooting at targets, and she confirmed it. He explained that he had to hit the target either with magic or a sword, and the grade would depend on the strength of his attack. Standing before the next evaluation point, the receptionist confidently said that the upcoming shootings would be easy thanks to Eris's magic, and Eris himself, as an enchantment mage, asked her not to expect too much from him. Emphasizing that he was supposed to be support, however, he secretly believed that he could still pass this test. Soon she led him to the testing field, where several straw targets lay on the ground nearby. She showed the task by forming a magical sphere and striking the target with it, explaining that the target would glow depending on the strength of the attack. To pass, one had to exceed his current attack power, and only the strongest of 3 attempts was considered. She also allowed him to use either a sword or magic for this test. He briefly thought that he could enhance the sword with enhancement magic, but if he chose magic, he wouldn't need any tools at all. He said that either option would do, but magic was more convenient for him, so he decided to use it, and the receptionist, seeing how easily he chose between methods, was quite surprised but agreed. He decided to use the spell Fireball, a simple spell for beginners, available to many support roles. Since he had only 3 attempts, he decided to use the initial spell for the first try. And for the second, he intended to score high using an enchanting spell, remembering his plan. He created an excessively large fireball and threw it toward the target, commenting that even a fireball had its limits. However, as soon as he turned around, he was surprised to see the receptionist's stunned expression. She called his abilities crazy and said she was blinded for a moment, but Eris calmly assured her that he hadn't even exerted himself. She was even more surprised to hear that he had not yet used all his strength, just as the fog from the previous strike had dissipated. The receptionist was stunned by the damage. Not only was the target mannequin destroyed, but the explosion also affected the neighboring mannequins. Eris doubted whether the mannequins were supposed to break, but she denied it, although they were undoubtedly broken, and she also acknowledged the test as passed. Regarding the last 2 shots, she informed him that there was no need to continue because he had already easily passed the evaluation. She pointed to the damaged arena and said that with such destruction, they would not even be able to continue. Without saying a word, Oris used healing magic and instantly restored the destroyed area, returning all the mannequins he had destroyed, and she immediately noted that although they could now continue the exams, it was unnecessary. In the end, Eris passed the shooting test with a single fireball. The next test was a practical exam where he would have to fight one-on-one with a C-rank examiner. Only those recognized as having passed this stage could proceed to the final exam. Novices of rank E usually rose to ranks D and C by completing guild tasks and gaining practical experience, while adventurers of rank C and above were generally considered established. Therefore, for the practical exam, Eris needed to gain the approval of an examiner who held the status of a full-fledged adventurer. When he entered the arena, he noticed that he was not alone and that there were many other candidates for the exam here. Meanwhile, at the reception, they noticed that few of Eris' caliber managed to complete all exams in one day. The examiner named Chris stood before the candidates and said that they looked significantly younger than him. He apologized for their wait and said he would be their opponent in the practical exam. He then explained that they needed to choose a fighting style for the duel, sword, or magic. The duel would end when one side could no longer fight or surrendered, and based on how the duel went, it would be determined whether they passed or failed. He confidently told them to approach him with a clear intention to win. Eris raised his hand and asked how points would be scored, since their success would depend on the duel's outcome. Chris explained that the exam simulated real requests. It was meant to check if the candidates were capable of passing the final exam. They evaluated basic combat skills, the ability to act in crisis situations, and the general ability to assess the situation, and Eris, hearing this, thought that the evaluation criteria were quite vague. Although it was not the answer he wanted, he still decided to continue. He also inquired whether he would pass if he defeated Chris. With a smirk and confidence, Chris said that he would indeed pass if he proved he was capable. He also noted that although victory guaranteed passing, he had never lost to any candidate who claimed such. Hearing this, Oris thought that even as support he was on the hero's team, and although the fight would be tough, he was confident he would not lose. Besides, he found comfort in the thought that victory guaranteed his passage. Chris called the first candidate in line and asked her to come out and challenge him. The girl stepped forward, and Eris felt relief because he avoided the first clash and now had time to carefully think through the plan. When the battle began, the girl actively used magic in combat, and Eris thought that for a girl her age, the future looked bright. "Is Chris ready?" Eris noticed that he read the flow of her magic and skillfully redirected the attack. When Chris rushed at the candidate at full speed, the girl noticeably flinched. Eros was surprised that she did not expect such a complete failure. She was much more skilled than her peers, but arrogance, it seems, ruined her. Instantly, Chris's sword hovered near her neck, and she immediately surrendered. Chris appreciated her skill, said her attack was powerful, but when she failed to strike in time, she was completely unprepared for what happened next. With such a level of skills, Chris said that she does not deserve to pass. He advised her to try next time, but only after she significantly improves her skills. Tears welled up in her eyes, so she had to leave the room. Next to perform was Eris. When Cindy's Chris checked the form, he was surprised to see that the enhancement mage was taking the exam. Eris also knew that enhancement mages were rarely found among ordinary adventurers. Professions granted by heaven were often quite specialized, while most were either mages or swordsmen. There were various rare roles, such as enhancement mages, healers, and even unique professions specializing in certain skills. Chris openly doubted whether enhancement mages really used magic, and Oris confirmed his intention to rely on that, adding that he currently did not have a sword. Chris then mentioned a rule that Eris clearly did not know, that candidates were not allowed to bring their own swords or staffs to the exam and had to borrow them from the guild. He also explained that swords differed significantly in combat power depending on their type. To ensure fairness, candidates and examiners had to use swords provided by the guild. Hearing this, Eris decided to borrow a sword from the guild, and Chris immediately gestured for the receptionist to bring another one. He noted that he had never met anyone who could wield both magic and sword, called Eris a magical swordsman, and added that it would be pointless if both his skills were half-hearted. When the receptionist brought the sword and the fight began, Chris allowed Eris to start the fight whenever he felt ready. Eris thought that Chris seemed ready again to let him make the first strike, but victory by a sudden attack did not bring satisfaction. Therefore, he decided to make his first strike cautious and moderate. At first, he cast 4 enhancement spells on himself, which increased his movement speed, attack tempo, strike power, and accuracy. After that, he also strengthened his sword with magic. Meanwhile, Chris was stunned to see Eruz's skill and that he could even enchant the sword, and at the same time, Eruz quickly rushed at the examiner. He cunningly cast 4 weakening spells on Chris and his sword. He immediately applied effects that reduced movement speed and attack speed, and even lowered Chris's attack power and accuracy. Chris was impressed by Eris's power, and his body and sword seemed to be weighed down by a mountain, and he could not understand what had happened in such a short time. With a lightning strike, Ares delivered a successful attack. But instead of hitting Chris, the strike tore off his wig, which now lay on the ground. The spectators were completely bewildered, and Iris thought that this was an unexpected turn of events and completely out of his control. When Eris stood directly behind Chris, he sincerely apologized for the unexpected behavior, but Chris, noticeably trembling in voice and body, quickly reassured him that there was no need to worry, and Eris felt a slight sense of guilt due to Chris's embarrassment. He was not going to hold back in this decisive duel and activated the step enhancement magic. He quickly created an accurate magic circle and carefully directed its energy into his legs. He moved with such incredible speed that he seemed to simply disappear from everyone's sight, and Chris could barely comprehend Eris's sudden disappearance. Eris quietly appeared directly behind him and pressed the cold blade of the sword against Chris Nipa, marking the end of the match and securing victory for herself. Chris accepted his defeat with dignity, and the other candidates were stunned to see such powerful strength that even the examiner gave up. They could not understand who this new candidate was, who so easily defeated the rank C examiner. Chris and Auras introduced themselves to each other. Then Chris asked if he was really the wizard from the hero team, and Eris immediately denied it. He questioned whether Chris really believed that a member of the hero party would undergo such trials. Just then, intently looking at Chris's shiny bald head, Eris apologized, but Chris quickly waved it off and said he understood it was unintentional. At that very moment, Eris offered to help him instantly grow hair, which greatly surprised Chris, who doubted whether it was really possible. Without hesitation, Eris placed his hand on Chris's head, and at that very moment, his bald spot was miraculously covered with thick dark hair, and Chris was left completely speechless. Stunned, Chris sincerely thanked him, and immediately credited Eris for the test, sending him straight to the final exam. Soon Eris reached the northeastern forest of Istal, near the village of Bergen, the designated place for the final exam. The task was to collect the required items. The receptionist had told him earlier that he needed to collect 20 life force herbs for the potion. Within the strictly allotted 5 hours, he could either completely avoid fights or engage in them while effectively gathering the necessary herbs. Life force herbs were the main ingredient of the potion that restored health and mana. In higher rank hunting grounds, they grew better due to the concentrated magical energy around. Horus believed that collecting 20 herbs in 5 hours was quite difficult for an E-rank adventurer, but at the reception, they advised him to try hard because a reward was promised for success. Eris was very happy about this prospect because any earnings were always useful. The Istal forest itself was of a fairly high level and suitable for adventurers, but the local monsters were usually manageable by a single traveler. Walking deeper into the forest, he soon came across a pile of about 10 herbs right in front of him and confidently said that gathering 20 would not be difficult, and suddenly, a green one appeared from somewhere. A cruel rat-like creature rushed at him at full speed. Eris instantly realized that despite the weak defense, the creature's attack was extremely savage due to its very sharp and poisonous fangs. Suddenly, Eris kicked the rat hard, and it rolled on the ground. The smarter the monsters were, the more cunning they had, so those creatures that saw Eris wisely retreated, which undoubtedly would have simplified Russ's task. After some time, he successfully gathered all the necessary herbs and headed back to the guild. Suddenly, from somewhere, he heard a piercing scream of a girl desperately calling for help, and Ares moved forward to find out what had happened. He found a young girl who was being ambushed by a threatening pack of blue wolves. Due to the lack of clear landmarks in their territory, lone travelers often found it difficult to conduct effective reconnaissance. Suddenly, a wolf lunged and attacked the girl named Celia, grabbing her wrist with sharp fangs. Celia's defense was broken, and her ineffective equipment was useless. She desperately tried to get the healing potion, but it accidentally slipped from her hands and fell to the ground. These fierce beasts bared their sharp fangs and prepared to attack. Then he immediately lunged at her, threw her back, and crashed into a tree. Celia tried to reach the thrown healing potion, but it was still slightly out of her reach. Then a wolf menacingly loomed over her, ready to attack, but Eris could no longer watch what was happening, because stealing experience among adventurers was taboo. At first, Eris decided not to interfere in their fight, but seeing Celia's helplessness, he could not stand aside and easily cast a powerful spell specially created for women, which significantly increased her defense and resistance to magic, enhanced healing abilities, and greatly accelerated movements. Then he cunningly cast spells on the aggressive creatures that slowed their movements, reduced attack power, and even worsened accuracy. Finally, he empowered himself, and when the wolves pounced on her, Celia involuntarily closed her eyes in fear, but when she cautiously opened them again, she was very surprised to see an unfamiliar figure nearby helping her fight the terrifying wolves, and Eris calmly advised her to stay close because the danger was still around. He realized that the true essence of buff magic lies in granting properties, and most such effects can be replicated. In other words, enhancement magic can indeed be used for attack. Eris boldly created a powerful magical circle that stood out, and instantly destroyed the entire horde of wolves, leaving Celia completely speechless. Several wolves who were lucky to survive his first attack immediately fled the scene. Eris carefully grabbed her by the shoulder and pulled her closer, saying she was standing very close to the smoldering flame. He warned that there could be serious consequences if she fell under his influence, but the presence of another girl distracted Eris greatly. His face reddened, yet he managed to keep his composure. He knew that in such an extraordinary situation, he could not be distracted, and shortly after they safely avoided immediate danger. Celia bowed before him and sincerely thanked him for the timely help, and Eurus simply said that it was a trifle for him. Celia said that this was an understatement and asked if he was a high-ranking adventurer. To her surprise, he replied that he is not yet an official adventurer and will become one only after he takes those herbs back to the guild. He inquired why Celia was alone in such a dangerous place and noted that without sufficient strength, lone adventurers could find it fatal. At first she hesitated a little, but very quickly it turned into determination when she confidently said that she aspired to become a hero. He asked if she wanted to join the squad of heroes, and her face lit up when she told him this. Once a hero saved her. Since then, heroes have become her greatest inspiration. She admitted that she constantly killed high-level monsters to efficiently accumulate experience points. But now, when through her carelessness she almost died, she seriously reflected on her hasty action. Eris informed her that the swordsman's place in the party of heroes was already taken, and that for the one who would follow this path, there would be a rather thorny road ahead, but Celia reassured him that there was no need to worry because she was not a swordswoman. However, he said that she used a sword, although she herself was not a fencer. Celia immediately said that her path did not fit into any typical type of work, and she was convinced that one of the rarest unique professions must exist in the world. Moreover, she confessed with noticeable admiration that she was a holy swordswoman. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in the southeastern part of the village Bergam, near the grave of Gerald's soldiers, the former hero team heir noticed that they now received a larger share of experience and even said that it was a very profitable way, just enough to exclude someone from the guild. Nardo confidently said that they would definitely reimburse the costs for those potions. Others also said that magic enhancement could easily be replaced by ordinary store-bought potions, and that in the end, driving out Orus was really the right decision. Next, they together engage in battle with a fierce wyvern. Some members noticed that the monster seemed unusually resilient that day. They struggled to keep up the pace, fighting an incredibly strong creature. They felt that his attacks were powerful and extremely harsh. During the fight, one of them took out a strength elixir for them to drink. Meanwhile, Nardo shouted and ordered them to fight the monster seriously. After joint struggle and many attempts, the team finally managed to defeat the wyvern. Nardo said that they would easily manage on their own and could even defeat a formidable enemy. Besides, he said it was just a coincidence that this particular twist is so strong. Then he ordered them not to lose the pace. The others only cautiously glanced at each other, as they did not dare to say anything rash in front of Nardo. Instead, Celia enthusiastically told Eruz about her unique job. She explained that the Sword Saint is a unique role without analogs, and if she succeeds, she will be able to become the highest stage of a swordsman's development. She was confident that she too could become a hero if she made the necessary efforts and accumulated experience points very persistently. In turn, Eris explained that being a hero is not always something brilliant and rosy, and that it cost a lot. Celius replied that she knows being a hero is hard, but decided to go on adventures with Eris and believes she had no other choice but to become a hero. When she pronounced his name so casually, Eris felt his breath catch. He was very surprised when suddenly, as if out of nowhere, his name was mentioned in the conversation. Then Harris asked why she wanted to go on an adventure with him. Celia calmly confessed that she had fallen in love with him and wanted to go on an adventure together to get closer, and Eris, hearing her sincere confession, quietly laughed, but quickly assured her that he was not mocking her dreams. He later wondered how she could trust him so easily if they had just met. To this, she replied that he risked his own life to save her. She also told a disturbing memory about how 3 years ago the Demon King's army invaded her native village Ruria. The demon grabbed her and immediately said he would get rid of her because he considered her inexperienced. Just when she was on the brink of death, she was saved by a group of heroes. One hero even reached out a hand to offer her help. The scene turned to the present, and Eris remembered that he once saved a child about her age in the village of Ruria, where the party of heroes stopped briefly, and he was sure that he saved Celia from the Ranjit family. Celia then looked at him intently, asking how he knew such exact details. Upon closer examination, everything quickly fell into place, and she noticed a striking resemblance to that boy 3 years ago, after which she suddenly realized that Eris was the same legendary hero from that time. Eris now definitely knew that he was recognized as Celia, and he wondered how a member of the hero party passed the adventurer's exam. Eris calmly told her that he was suddenly expelled from the hero party, and now he was just a novice adventurer, but Celia was completely fascinated by this. Suddenly meeting her savior, she was so surprised that she could not help but hug Eris, the very person she had longed to meet for so long. Then he asked if she really wanted to form a party with him. Celia answered with unwavering determination that it suited her perfectly. Seeing her resolute reaction, Aros thought that it seemed she really intended to stay. After some time, they reached the guild house, and the person at the reception was very surprised by their early arrival. When she asked about herbs for vigor, Eurus immediately summoned his inventory portal and demonstratively laid out all the collected herbs, along with the creatures he had defeated right in front of her, subtly hinting that she should buy some materials while she was here. Seeing the inventory portal, the receptionist was impressed and immediately asked about its mysterious nature. However, Harris refused to tell. He said it was a company secret. In fact, it was his item slot skill that allowed him to open a portal to another dimension using enhancement magic. It was a side effect he accidentally gained when using speed magic to interfere with spacetime. But no one else could open it, so it became almost useless for the hero team. The receptionist asked him to wait a moment while she processed the purchase. She also congratulated him on successfully passing the venturer exam. She handed him the guild certificate and advised him to keep it safe, since reissuing it would cost a significant amount of 10,000 jewels. It was then that Celia intervened and said that she wanted to create a new party. A few minutes later, Eris and Celia left the guild house, and the formation of the group was finally completed. Celia suggested stopping by a diner nearby before returning. But Eris admitted that he had nowhere to stay that night, and so it was urgent to find a place. Celia very casually suggested that he stay at the hotel where she had already been. But Eris tried to explain that if she were a man, there would be no problem, but he was worried that something might happen if they decided to live in the same room. The explanation seemed not to reach her thick head, and with big innocent eyes she asked if he would like to live in the same room with her. He could not resist her simple innocence, and so for a while went to the diner. Soon they reached the diner and were served several delicious dishes. Seeing the huge portions, Eris wondered if she could eat it all, and she assured him not to worry, saying that she eats quite a lot. He then asked if she was really serious about letting him stay in her room. She unquestionably agreed to this, and said with a joyful expression that she could eat so much and still be close to her beloved person. Although later she realized that the portion was indeed a bit too much for her appetite, Eris suggested eating her leftovers. She said that she really didn't need to force herself. When Eris started eating with the same spoon as her, her expression immediately changed. She thought it might be an indirect kiss. Seeing her embarrassment, he asked if she was okay, and she desperately tried to assure him that everything was fine. Soon they came to her room, and Eurus said that she was doing quite well, and Silly in turn noted that. She carefully chose that very inn after trying several other places. Seeing that the room was quite spacious, he said there was enough space for him to rest comfortably. But when he began spreading the sheet on the floor, she asked what he was doing. She later said that he should rest in a normal bed, otherwise he might get sick. Embarrassed by her direct remark, Oris tried to explain the obvious problem that a boy and a girl sharing one bed was an issue. However, her innocent puppy eyes appeared again, and she quietly asked if he really didn't like the idea of resting with her. Eurus again couldn't resist her request and eventually agreed. Settling into the same bed as her, he was very shy, especially when she lay very close to him. Suddenly, Celia quietly laughed and said that his trembling breath tickled her neck, so he immediately turned away. Because of the rather cramped bed, her body continued to press against his, and Eris's face turned completely red. The next morning, Eris was noticed energetically doing push-ups. The refined skills of a sorcerer are not acquired overnight. They required endurance and broad knowledge, with ancient spellbooks and myths playing a decisive role. As soon as Celia woke up, she cheerfully greeted him good morning and asked why he woke up so early. Eris replied that he was simply doing his daily training and had just completed 1,000 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats. She was very surprised to hear about his strict daily routine and doubted whether he followed it constantly. He casually asked if that wasn't a usual thing for everyone, but she immediately objected. This made him think that those heroes from his former party might have mocked the real effectiveness. With a concerned expression, she noted that training is important, but he shouldn't overwork himself so much. Eris openly said that he wants to defeat the Demon King and then live peacefully, and that he will make every effort for this. He also said that if they defeat the Demon King, universal magic will disappear and they will no longer have to fight. In this world, substances in the atmosphere were mostly harmless to people, but could activate various types of monsters. The Demon King amplified this magical energy through powerful barriers, thereby driving these monsters insane. Paradoxically, Ors had to become stronger to avoid fights. Celia said that everyone truly wanted a peaceful life, but added that his ambitions were probably too great for him. Eris could not disagree with her, although fully understanding this from such an explanation was difficult. Then he told an old story from 6 years ago, where in their real village, a dungeon for guerrillas suddenly appeared. Unlike ordinary dungeons, if this dungeon was not cleared by sunset, monsters would continuously pour out from its depths. At that time, both of Ors's parents were respected A-rank adventurers and entrusted him with evacuating the villagers, while heirs insisted on fighting alongside them, but they did not want to drag someone who was not yet an adventurer into such a battle. His parents were very strong, but that day he felt an ominous premonition. It was exactly his 13th birthday, and his parents promised to celebrate it with him. However, the dungeon remained untouched when the sun set, and due to the relentless flow of monsters, even more adventurers tragically died. As a child, Eris understood the fate of his parents, so he decided to become strong and avenge them both. Celia recalled the incident with the partisan basement in the city and felt relieved that he was lucky to survive the attack. Eris said that incidents like Aroi's would repeat if the Demon King was not defeated, and he firmly decided to prevent such disasters at any cost. He apologized once again for spoiling the mood, but Celia said that this was a very important topic for discussion. However, Eris believed that there was no point in dwelling on the past. She suggested they eat before heading to the guild, and Celia smiled gently and advised him to take a quest immediately upon arrival. Soon they reached the guild, and Eurus thought that without coordinated teamwork they would not be able to defeat the Demon King, so it was important to strengthen the entire team. His first goal was to strengthen Celia, so he chose a quest in a certain area. When Celia asked if he had found any suitable quest, Eris nodded and handed her a letter with the quest, which was a request to destroy monstrous birds. She said that she was not sure how much help she could provide in that particular quest, but he directly told her that the quest of that day was created specifically for her. Although it would be a certain challenge for Celia, she would gain a lot of experience points. However, she reluctantly took on the task because she said her attacks would not reach the birds. He asked if she really could not defeat flying enemies with a sword, and she replied that it was impossible from any side. Seeing her determined reaction, Eris thought that she was too fixated on her principles, and because of that could not fully reveal the talent of the Sword Saint, so she needed to overcome this obstacle. Without hesitation, he offered to teach her a simple trick to complete the task. As the day passed, they soon arrived at South Road 227 near the village of Belva. Eris offered to show the technique. When a monstrous bird attacked him, he calmly ordered her to channel magic into the sword, grip it, and imagine it strengthening during the swing. Celia was very impressed by his display of power, but he still had stunning tricks up his sleeve that he wanted to show. Soon he directed a blazing laser of magical waves into the sky and instantly destroyed the surrounding area. He stood in one place and said what he believed in. Even she could perform the feat the same way, but she refused, shaking her head persistently. Amazed at how such a thing could happen, he returned the sword to her, but at first it was quite difficult for her to grasp it. Then he began to explain that the key was to relax her shoulders and allow her magic to flow freely during the sword swing. Remembering this advice, Celia obeyed and swung the sword, but her movements were clumsy and inexperienced, so Eris came closer, firmly took both her hands, and suggested swinging together a bit. This made Celia blush completely. Noticing her tension, he, unaware of it, asked if everything was all right, but she quickly declined and tried to focus on training. He then asked her to breathe in unison and strengthen the magic with a steady rhythm, with a quick command. Foolishly agreeing, a powerful beam of magic burst from her sword, instantly striking and knocking down the monstrous bird. Eris then asked her to keep that rhythm and then try to feel its essence. When she agreed and tried on her own, her strikes constantly missed the target, but he encouraged her to keep trying. Even when her attacks slightly deviated from the target, Celia kept training and soon was able to effortlessly apply the technique he showed her, and the number of her successful attacks sharply increased. Soon they had only one monster left to defeat to successfully complete the task. Meanwhile, Eris constantly praised her for her outstanding swordsmanship, but he warned her not to lose vigilance until the very end. Although Eris was ready to help if something went wrong, it seemed she would complete the task without problems. That was when he became instantly interested, when Celia informed him about the magical birds, which were now completely flaying the scene. However, their escape looked strange for creatures that were only frightened by the Celia, because small magical birds usually do not scatter from formation unless something is really wrong. At that very moment, a huge wyvern appeared, caught Celia by surprise, and she anxiously asked what she should do in such a situation. Eris showed neither a shadow of fear nor surprise. Instead, he calmly said that this last target simply appeared on its own. He thought that Celia easily dealt with all the magical birds with one strike, and with her current strength, she could handle that wyvern on her own without problems, and he was overwhelmed by terrible anxiety. She asked if he was really asking her to defeat that huge creature alone, but he calmly explained that it would be easier for her to hit the big target than those small birds. In a moment, Celia admitted that it was indeed an easier target, but her determination wavered when she saw a fierce beast with sharp fangs. Seeing that she was losing composure, Eris tried to calm her down. She firmly said that she was fully ready to defeat that creature with her skills, especially after mastering new techniques and gaining experience in battles. She then noticeably calmed down and immediately pulled herself together. She decided to make one last attempt. When she struck again, the magical beam once more hit the wyvern and pierced its thick scales. Celia could hardly believe her eyes that she had defeated the monster herself. Without hesitation, she immediately hugged Eris and thanked him for teaching her, but he modestly said that he had done almost nothing, only showed her the technique and advised Celia to believe a little more in her abilities. Then he suggested returning to the village, but she gently called him modest for not fully acknowledging the scale of his invaluable help. Soon they returned to the guild and informed the receptionist about the completion of the task, who seemed to be quite impressed by the sufficient area and skill in managing time. However, he admitted that during that quest he did not fight at all. Instead, only Celia defeated the magical birds with her sword. He said that he was just watching her performance from behind and that it was entirely her merit. However, the person at the reception found it hard to believe that Celia could defeat that many magical birds with just a sword, because it seemed physically impossible. Yet Celia stepped forward and said that she had learned an amazing spell from Eris. She even praised him, saying that he teaches extremely skillfully and could easily make the impossible possible. Eris thought to himself that he was only going to support Celia from the side, but did not expect her to praise him so openly in front of the receptionist. He could not help but blush from her enthusiastic compliments, so he smoothly interrupted the conversation, deliberately diverted the topic from himself, and instead said that they had completed the task. In connection with this, she immediately began to check the delivered materials. But it seemed to her that one item was missing. He calmly reassured her and immediately took out another missing material. It was the same huge wyvern that Celia had defeated earlier, and the receptionist was stunned to see it right in front of her, and doubted that it was really the wyvern that Celia had defeated. But Eris looked truly puzzled and asked if his appearance shocked her so much. Without hesitation, she said that it really shocked her, because that wyvern was one of the strongest magical creatures, and even B-rank adventurers had a very hard time defeating it. Eris was really surprised because he did not suspect his own such strength, and the party of heroes easily defeated such creatures, so the receptionist considered them very strong, and at that moment, Chorus asked if the wyvern material would sell well, and the receptionist replied that it would significantly increase their income. Then she quickly appraised the wyvern and, meanwhile, she recorded the completion of the quest. Then she took their guild IDs and updated their points for completing the quest, which now amounted to 30 out of 100. They were also awarded 1 guild point for the quest. And she also informed him that he would receive the next rank as soon as these points reached 10. By completing quests and accumulating these points, people will eventually raise their adventure rank. Celia then asked if they could just level up by completing easier quests. The receptionist replied that it would not be a problem, but she said that they needed to complete at least one quest from each level. Ensure that unworthy adventurers do not reach the higher ranks. But the receptionist immediately added that they clearly do not qualify for E rank due to their outstanding abilities and great strength. Just then their evaluation was completed, and she was very surprised when she saw such a large amount on the list. She said that the reward for their quest amounted to 50,000 jewels. The ransom price for the wyvern itself would be another 50,000 jewels. When the two of them left the guild house, Celia was noticeably nervous because she did not know what to do with such a large sum. She had never received so much money at once before and was very afraid it might be stolen. Eris calmly said that in that case they would simply go hunting again, but Celia, with a worried expression, noted that this was her hard-earned money. Hearing this, Eris suggested splitting the 50,000 application fee between themselves and giving the entire reward for the wyvern to Celia. He recalled that his former team of heroes constantly argued over dividing the loot. But this time, Eris wanted to divide the loot fairly because Celia had handled the wyvern herself, though she denied that she was alone. They said that without him they could not have defeated it and insisted that he receive the entire amount. Hearing this, Ors could not hold back and called her kind. He gently suggested that she temporarily give him the money, slipped the pouch into the item slot, and said he would spend it on buying suitable weapons for Scylla. She then pulled out her current sword and said it was quite a good weapon. But Eris assumed that it was probably a decent sword from the market. Then he said that although it was a good sword, it was not enough to reveal the true power of the sword saint, and she would soon notice that this was lacking in many aspects. He advised thinking ahead and buying a better sword in advance, and Celia was surprised that he thought so far ahead. He then claimed that for 100,000 received jewels, they could even order a custom-made sword. Hearing this, Celia's face lit up with joy. She asked if it was a gift from him, but he simply said it was a reward for her efforts. At the same time, the former team of heroes of Eris barely kept up the pace, because they finally realized that banishing Eris from the group was a big mistake. Although one of them could help a little with potions and healing, it was clearly not enough to recover the damage they were currently suffering. Other members considered the possibility that Oris was simultaneously weakening the monsters and giving them buffs. Another said that he had never heard of such a possibility. They recalled that at that time they had banished Eris without hesitation. Nardo forced him to be silent, and they realized that Eris was really trying to convey something important before he was expelled. Now they understood that Eris had been quietly supporting them all along. One member even said that if she had known the truth earlier, she would never have allowed Nardo to convince her to expel Eris. Nardo suddenly ran up to her and grabbed her shirt tightly, accusing her of hypocrisy and saying that she was secretly scheming too. And now they treated him like a villain. He said that they all together decided to exclude Eris from the party, so everyone was equally guilty. Trembling, she apologized to him, and Nardo suggested to stop dwelling on the past and move forward. Most importantly, he asked about the availability of healing elixirs, and she replied that she had already spent the funds allocated for the month. Without hesitation, he simply ordered her to go buy more at the store. She said that repairing the damaged equipment after yesterday's brutal fight cost 800,000 jewels, and if such problems continued, it would greatly affect the accommodation payment next month. Nardo was silent for a moment, then said that Eris was a comrade in their adventures and that he would not refuse him if Eris wanted to join the group again. It was obvious that Nardo did not want to humiliate himself before his comrades after he himself expelled Eris, and he believed that if he was not careful, the balance of power in the group could completely overturn. After his sudden decision, the other members immediately agreed without much objection. Naruto also assured them that he would personally ask Eris to return if he met him again. Meanwhile, the girl claimed that Erorist would never return after such an exile, but the other members made her shut up. He said that the very fact that Nardo even changed his mind was an important step forward. Moreover, he noted that Eris was not even qualified as an adventurer, and without that, he could no longer take on orders. They were convinced that he had no choice but to return because he could not earn money or find new comrades, but they did not know that Aruz had already created a new party with his very reliable partner Celia. Meanwhile, in the weapon shop, the sellers refused Eros, saying that they only sell what is in stock, and custom orders are difficult to fulfill. Celia thought that the opponent she defeated brought her a whole 50,000 jewels, but she could not even order a custom sword. Eris suggested trying to convince the weapon merchants in the capital, and at that moment, his attention focused on something new. Nearby, people were talking that the dwarf recently refused a job offer with wealth and jewels, and they did not know how to persuade him. The gnomes were famous for excellent craftsmanship, and Eurus himself had heard about that master from their clan during campaigns with the group of heroes. Without hesitation, Ors approached these people and asked to tell more. The man noticed that Eris seemed familiar to him and asked if he was also interested in that skillful dwarf. In response, Oris agreed, and Celia enthusiastically said that she wanted to order a powerful sword made to order. The man said that they also went there hoping to find good weapons, but that old dwarf was stubborn and simply rejected their request. Moreover, they told him that the gnome would only craft for those he considered worthy. The criterion for acceptance was only mastery of swordsmanship. Then, Eris took out a map and asked them to indicate where he was located, and the man clearly pointed on the map in a certain direction. Seeing that the workshop was very close, Celia decided to go there the same day, and at that moment her stomach suddenly growled loudly, and she blushed and tried to explain the awkward sound. But Eris decided that instead they would go to the workshop the next day, and asked her not to strain herself when she was so hungry. Suddenly, a girl named Sherrit accidentally bumped into a burly man and scratched her knee, without hesitation. Eris immediately approached her and instantly healed her wound. Sherrit was stunned when she saw that her wounded knee had miraculously healed. She sincerely thanked and quickly left. Celia wanted to compliment his kindness, but her stomach betrayed her again and growled loudly, leaving her completely humiliated. Eris's soft laughter only increased her irritation, so she scolded him for not being polite. The next morning they came to the infamous workshop of the gnome Gale, and when they knocked on the sturdy gates, a short elderly man appeared and demanded to know what they were doing here. Ryuz apologized for coming without warning, introduced himself, and said he was looking for a master craftsman. Gale shook his head with distrust and said that Eris is another adventurer looking for weapons. Eris informed him that they wanted to order a sword for Scylla, and Gale, without hesitation, asked if she really deserved his custom-made sword. Before first asking to show her current weapon, carefully examining her sword, he noticed that although its potential was truly impressive, it still lacked refined skills. He firmly believed that if you entrusted your sword to an inexperienced person, they would simply misuse its power, and Scylla's face grew grim as she resigned herself. She decided that she needed to improve her skills before daring to return, seeing how easily they give up. Gale remarked in surprise that after the refusal, he didn't even try to bribe his way through, and Eurus replied that Gale seemed like a person who couldn't be bought with gold. And besides, he didn't have enough money to buy himself entry by any means. Although Gale found this frankness pleasant, his initial conclusion didn't change, and suddenly Sherrit appeared, who wondered if her grandfather was sending adventurers away empty-handed again. It was then that she met Eris and Celia, and thanked them again for their invaluable help yesterday. Puzzled, Gale asked if she knew them, and Sherrit confirmed, telling everything that had happened the day before, shortly after that. Eurus couldn't believe that the child they had saved would turn out to be his granddaughter, and it seemed they had managed to break through Gale's stern facade. Because it seemed he had softened a bit after learning about yesterday's incident. Gale then said that they were not the bad people he had initially thought them to be, and that he would now immediately give them his sword. Celia looked quite pleased with his message. Sherrit said that her grandfather simply didn't want anyone to misuse his valuable swords. Moreover, Gale said that if the adventurers were weak, they would easily lose the sword to a villain. Then he set 3 important conditions before them. Firstly, Eris would train diligently and master the art of Celia's fencing perfectly. Secondly, he would use a sword made by Gale himself. Hearing that Gale would make a custom sword for him, in addition to Scylla's sword. Eris continued to question him, but Gale immediately said that in his opinion Ryuz was the most skilled fencer, and Celia had the greatest potential as a fencer. Hearing this, Eris tried to explain that he was not a swordsman, but only a mage, but Gale stood his ground and said that titles were unimportant to him. He explained that as long as they were pure and strong swordsmen, that was enough for him, because it was ultimately his most cherished dream as a craftsman. Then Eris asked if his last condition concerned gold, but Gale dismissed him and said he already had more than enough wealth. Then he announced the last condition, to bring more than 1 kilogram of spiritual stone. Soon Eris and Celia found themselves in the dense Bergam forest, in a land known as the Forest of Spirits. Eris could not help but say that Gale had indeed set the most difficult conditions for their final task. In that forest, the magical energy of the spirits gradually accumulated in various magical creatures. At the very top of the food chain, predators were the most numerous. While Celia carefully struck the monsters with her sword, Eris examined the stones they left behind. He said with disappointment that even the large ones gave only about 30% of the required amount, and Celia noted that encountering the strongest monsters was truly a matter of luck. Eris said that they would have to endure a bit during the search, and Celia jokingly remarked that the monsters could come to them themselves. When he heard this, an idea immediately came to his mind. He said that they would lure the strongest monster with bait. When she asked about the bait, Eris directly replied that he would be the bait, and Celia was stunned. It was not entirely illogical, because Eris decided to become the bait himself, carefully regulating his magical power to attract large predators who would sense its fluctuations. Harris believed that if he simply restrained a large surge of magic and then released it immediately, the biggest beast in the forest would definitely appear. Eris immediately executed his plan, and as he expected, the most terrifying monster in the forest appeared. Its formidable steps shook the ground threateningly. Celia was clearly frightened by its sudden appearance, so Eris quickly covered her mouth to keep her silent. At that moment, his huge, terrible monster fully appeared, and Celius was gripped by strong horror. Eris noticed that due to the enormous size of the beast, they could obtain a truly gigantic spirit stone. That predatory beast ruled the entire forest and was known as Behemoth, a strong enemy whom even Eris's former team could not defeat in his heroic times. Eris immediately devised a plan and ordered Scylla to jump back right after the attack, while he himself would distract her. He immediately created a magic circle right behind himself, successfully attracting the monster's attention, and the enraged beast quickly rushed at him. At the opposite corner of the field, Celia successfully released a magic beam and precisely hit the mighty enemy. In a decisive tone, Eris quickly ordered her to dodge, and at the same time created a wind arrow with his powerful wind magic. Despite Behemoth's natural affinity with the earth, Celius and Eris cleverly combined their magical powers and directed them at Behemoth with full destructive force. When the defeated monster lay before them, skepticism shone in Celius's eyes. She could not believe that they had defeated Behemoth themselves. She praised Oris's incredible strength, but he modestly said he could not have done it alone. She said she was only following his orders, and Eurus decided not to focus on this and let the matter go. Moreover, he claimed that a monster of such caliber should yield a huge spirit stone, and they began to examine the body of the fallen creature, to their surprise. In its stomach, they found a tiny young girl with delicate wings, who fit in both hands, while Celia doubted the very fact of her existence. Eris confessed that due to her special magical power, she might be the spirit living there. It was then. The girl regained consciousness and said that she had rested very well. And when her gaze settled on two different strangers, she calmly inquired who they were. Despite the girl's tiny appearance, Eris instinctively felt her immense power, which was tens of times stronger than even giants. For now, he decided to be cautious around her and not to scare her. But without much thought, Celia introduced herself to her as a member of the Reciparty and even introduced him on his behalf, despite his anxiety. The young girl gladly introduced herself as Sylph, the infamous forest spirit, and Eris, seeing this, felt relieved that it concerned only him. He was a little embarrassed for being so suspicious, while Silly, on the contrary, noted that he seemed strangely shy. Moreover, Sylph said that people were rarely seen so deep in the mountains. After further asking about their affairs, Eris frankly said that they had come to search for spirit stones. Feeling this, Sylph fell silent for a moment, before concentrating hard to create a sturdy stone chair. Oris was stunned to see the supreme spiritual stone right before him and immediately wanted to have it, so Sylph quickly handed him the stone without hesitation, and generously offered to prepare even a double portion for them. Eris could not help but admire this thing, thinking about its great weight, since even 1 kilogram of spiritual stone was considered extremely rare. Although it was a dream come true for him, he said that its size far exceeded what they could afford. Without hesitation, Sylph innocently remarked that she could make as many batches of those stones as she wanted. Celia then explained to her that spirit stones were formed from excess magical energy, and even from the largest beasts, usually only palm-sized stones were obtained. Since there was nothing even close to larger than the previous one on the market, it was truly considered priceless. Eris also gently told her that she could not just take such a priceless item without offering anything in return. Sylph simply said that she wanted to travel. He was a bit doubtful and asked if that was really all, and she nodded in confirmation. Celia also asked if spirits like her could really be outside the forest, and assured that she could manage a few years outside the forest. With a gloomy expression, she confessed that she had been completely alone in that dark forest for a long time, and it became a real suffocation for her. Moreover, she admitted that just talking with them significantly improved her mood and lifted her spirits. Eris and Scylla exchanged glances, after which Oris extended his hand and invited Sylph to join their adventure. When Eurus activated the item slot to place a spirit stone in it, Self saw this with surprise and asked if they could also enter the spirit world. He looked quite embarrassed by her remark, so she decided instead to show and quickly transformed half of her body into an item slot. Eris now understood that the domain he had long considered his personal place for things was actually the spirit world, and he himself said that it was very spacious, and more importantly. She said that for a human to have access to the spirit world was truly incredible. On the other hand, Silja also praised Eris for being so wonderful, and he was surprised why she was so proud of him. She informed Sylph that she could freely travel the spirit world and that Eris was now essentially a spirit, and Sylph jokingly called Eris Dad. This really impressed him, and seeing that he just became speechless, she asked if she had said something wrong, but Eris replied that she came out of the belly of the behemoth, so technically she was his child. She completely ignored his remark and began calling Celia Mom, and Celia was not worried at all and playfully continued the game. She even asked if she felt uncomfortable when called Mom, but Sylve innocently said she was sincerely glad to finally have a family. With a tender look and flushed cheeks, she then said that Aruz had finally become a father too. Hearing this, Eris was stunned and speechless, because suddenly it seemed that Celia and he were already a couple. He asked himself if he felt good, and Sylite wondered if he really disliked being called Dad. Seeing their sweet and innocent faces, Eris could not resist and simply agreed with their reckless and playful decisions. After a few minutes, the three reached the village, and Self was very surprised to see such a large number of people, while Eris thought they were looking at him because Self was standing behind. Seeing that people were staring so intently, Self became embarrassed and suddenly struck himself in the spiritual dimension. Suddenly, his former team of heroes appeared right before him, the same people who had cruelly kicked him out of the group. Seeing them, Eris asked what they wanted from him, and Naruto asked him not to be so cold to them and reminded him that they were former comrades. Eris did not understand why they appeared out of nowhere after kicking him out of the party, and Nardo said that since Eris left, it seemed everyone had a lot on their mind, and he even wondered if Eris did not miss his former comrades. He further said that if he wanted, he could agree to be accepted back into the heroes' party. Nardo also said that Eris 9 is still listed in the hero party roster, so his return is only a matter of time, and he still has a chance to rejoin the party. Although only 3 days have passed without important magical assistance from Eris, Nardo and others gave up their pride much faster than he expected. Eris said with a barely noticeable smile that everyone seems to misunderstand something fundamental. He then said that he doubted whether they really wanted him to return to the party, added that they seemed completely confused about their position, and this sharp remark left everyone speechless for a moment. Nardo sharply replied that it seemed Eris misunderstood their intentions, and others also warned him that once he leaves the hero's path, his rise to power will end, and this is his last chance to reconsider their decisions. However, Eris blandly told them that he didn't care about being a hero or rising in ranks, immediately took out the defeated behemoth from the portal of his inventory right above them, and added that he was completely satisfied with his current position. He added that he never intends to return to the hero party, and now the most important thing for him is that during this time, he has gained truly important friends. Boiling with rage, Nardo called him Koki and threatened to immediately erase his name from the royal city's registers, adding that Aryuz would regret not listening earlier. In response, Oros warned him in a carefree tone, saying that only time will tell who will regret more, and advised Nardo to do as he pleases. Shortly after their departure, Scythe came out of the portal and asked about those strangers, and Scylla replied that it was probably the former hero team of Ori. Celia noted that they could have asked more politely if they desperately wanted to bring him back, but Eris simply replied that their pride would never allow them to do that. On the other hand, Self told them that she would hide in the spirit world whenever she felt the presence of other people nearby. Soon they reached Gale's workshop and placed a chair made of spirit stone before him, and he was completely shocked. Gale immediately put on his glasses and carefully examined the object, thinking aloud about how Eris managed to obtain such a valuable material, and Eris explained it as a whim of the spirits. A remark that was partially true. Gale said he had never seen such a wonderful material before, and expressed a passionate desire to immediately start working on that extraordinary piece. Gale immediately got to work, diligently shaping the item with precise hammer strikes. Oris was worried that such an action might interfere with the formation of magic in the spirit stone, and meanwhile Sherrod arrived and suggested sitting down to drink tea while Gale was busy with his work. Soon, they talked over steaming cups of tea, and the sheriff proudly told that if an ordinary blacksmith needed days for such a task, her grandfather could handle it quickly on his own, having the strength of 100, and Celia noted that Gale was quite a boastful old man, but also wondered if such a complex thing could really be forged so quickly. Orst replied that modern blacksmiths also use magic, and the strong flow of magic he had previously felt from Gale confirmed the rumors about his impressive abilities. Eris asked when it would be most convenient to return for the swords, but when Sherritt said everything would be ready by the end of the day, he jumped to his feet in incredible surprise. He said everything was happening too fast, but she praised the grandfather even more for his efficiency and world-famous craftsmanship. Just then Gale came and announced that his work was finished, presented before them 2 amazing swords, and declared that these were undoubtedly his most outstanding works. As soon as Eris grabbed his sword, he immediately felt its amazing lightness and agility. Although these swords did not use spirit stone directly, they were filled with concentrated magic, which significantly increased the attack power. On the other hand, Scylla was extremely pleased to receive her first sword made especially for her, which was incredibly light and very comfortable to wield, but Arist immediately warned her not to swing it carelessly. However, his efforts were in vain when a light swing of her sword caused a powerful magical explosion that completely destroyed Gale's house and left everyone stunned. Seeing a huge hole in the workshop ceiling, Celia noticeably flinched and did not know what to do. Gale realized that he really should not have trusted an inexperienced amateur like her with his wonderful sword. However, Eurus reacted quickly and used his healing magic to effortlessly restore the large hole in the ceiling. Seeing this, Sherritt praised him for his excellent skills, and Gale finally sighed with relief. Meanwhile, Celia deeply bowed before Gale and sincerely apologized for ruining his precious house, but he kindly said not to worry because the house actually looked much cleaner than before. Gale obtained a promise from them that Eris would take on the important responsibility for Celia and master the new sword himself, because he was convinced that Eris and Celia were naturally connected. And they both diligently agreed before leaving. After leaving the workshop, Celia apologized once again for her reckless behavior, but Eris warned her to be careful with the new sword and emphasized its extraordinary durability. Just as Self appeared out of nowhere, arched his back, stretched, and yawned widely, and when he asked if she was tired, she immediately denied it. Eris thought that in some things she really was quite childish. Celia suddenly shuddered and noticed that the days were getting longer, but the nights were still cool. At that moment, an idea came to her mind, and with a slight smile, she gently took Oro's hand, saying that it would warm them temporarily. Because of this, his face uncontrollably flushed, and Sylph jokingly remarked that they were a real couple. But Cillian indifferently said that his hands were just very warm. When she gently intertwined her fingers with his, she whispered that she wanted to stay like that forever. Eris's face turned red because he thought it was serious if she really did not realize the awkwardness she was causing, but at the same time decided that maybe he was just overcomplicating everything. At that moment, Self jokingly said that her mom and dad got along very well. She also asked if they were finally going home, and Eris said they were going to Celia's tavern. Sylph blushed a little and mischievously asked if they would stay in the same room, to which Celia calmly replied that there was no free space for Oro at the inn. Sylph called her incredible and jokingly called her mom, and Eris thought that one had to be extremely careful with Sylph. It was then that they noticed a suspicious boy in a worn jacket with a hood, who seemed to be looking for a certain guest in a black cloak and was standing at the agreed meeting place. As Arvis walked further, the boy suddenly approached him, and when Eris asked who he was, the boy quietly gestured for him to follow to the adjacent alley. Celia asked if he really knew that person, and Eris said that the boy did not look hostile, but at the same time was interested in the circumstances. At that moment, something clicked in his head, and he wondered if that suspicious boy knew that he was a former hero. Without hesitation, Eris decided to follow the boy into the narrow alley. The boy later apologized for disturbing them, and when asked who he was, he admitted that he was buying guild cards. Moreover, he believed that Eris had a few more guild cards and had been patiently waiting for their arrival for a long time. Hearing this, Eris said that a personal guild card could never be superfluous, and trading such cards was strictly prohibited. It was immediately clear that the boy had mistaken Eris for someone else, and as soon as he realized his mistake, he tried to run away, suggesting that they just pretend as if they had never met. But Eurus firmly grabbed him by the hood and said sternly. It seemed the boy was fully aware of his misdeeds and would have to answer for them for the sake of the whole world. When he quickly threw the boy into his spirit world, the boy said he did it only for profit and promised not to do it again. Soon Eris and Celia came to the guild house and immediately took out a stack of guild cards, placing them right in front of the receptionist. This completely stunned her. When she asked what had happened, he told about every detail of the events. She said that the loss and theft of guild cards has long been a serious and troublesome problem, but before she could say more, an unknown woman screamed piercingly and asked if they also had her guild card. When the crowd quickly gathered and began demanding their guild cards, the administrator at the reception insistently asked them to calm down and take out their cards one by one. Seeing this chaos, Eris realized it was a serious problem and apologized for burdening her so much just before closing. He also inquired what would happen to the boy involved in this illegal activity. She said he would be handed over to security and then his parents would be notified. At that moment, the boy said he had neither parents nor brothers or sisters and no one to call him, realizing he was an orphan. Eris said that he understood his feelings well because he himself knew the pain of losing parents at such a young age. However, he also said that this did not justify his actions, and that he must take full responsibility for his actions. Harris asked what would happen to the orphans, and the receptionist replied that they would probably be taken to an educational institution in the royal capital. As soon as he heard this, Eurus felt relieved, because he believed that young orphans like them still needed to be given an important chance for rehabilitation. When they started to leave, the boy thanked him and with a gloomy expression said that he struggled very hard to make ends meet, living with barely enough income to support himself. Eris silently observed his unkempt appearance, concluding that he was just a petty bandit, and the profits mostly went into his boss's pocket. He strongly advised the boy to leave the underground world, because Eris had done a lot to save him from a much worse fate. Moreover, when they finally began to part ways, Horace noticed that those sensible women who had earlier, loudly, demanded her guild card now stood noticeably upset. Her expression showed that she probably did not find her lost guild card in the return stack. However, Celia's eyes narrowed slightly when she saw that he was intently looking at another woman, and she, pouting in offense, said directly that she was leaving. Noticing her unusual reaction, he asked if everything was all right, but she insisted that she was not angry. Although the expression on her face still remained stubbornly pouting, soon they were shown standing in front of the task board. Scylla thought about which quest to complete to properly test her new sword, although she was still limited to E-rank quests. Meanwhile, Eris thought that he had spent a considerable amount of money on his sword, so he decided to complete some mission to pay for lodging. Celia expressed concern and suggested simply giving up and sticking to the usual orders, but he refused and immediately gave her a quest form, in which the task was to hunt an E-rank golem. Golems had enormous destructive power and armor as hard as stone, but were quite slow. In addition, Oris assured her that even E-rank adventurers could handle this enemy if there were a dozen people, so this would also be a good target for Celia. Worry appeared on her face. She said that they really take on enemies designed for 12 people. But he calmly assured her that now she was not alone as before, and under his protection she would not even get scratched. He also praised her for her independence. With a new wave of confidence, she agreed to fulfill the request, and Eurus thought to himself that the praise from Celia and Dai constantly lifted her spirits. Finding herself in a lush green forest, Silt's face lit up with delight as she looked at the landscape. Finding the bright landscape endless and extraordinarily refreshing, Eris thought that she had really spent so much time in that dark, secluded forest, and he promised to allow himself to fully enjoy the world beyond it. He reminded Scylla of their current task and quickly devised a strategic plan. First, he would distract the Gauls with his magic, and then she would quickly attack from behind. While they carefully executed the plan, he himself became bait in front of the huge and terrifying golem. When Eris called Celia with a gesture, she rushed at the golem and struck it with full destructive force, causing the monster to split in half, and Celia, still in disbelief, wondered if this was really the end. He confirmed that it looked that way. Gale's sword was undoubtedly powerful, but such extraordinary strength could not be explained by that alone. Scylla believed that the Gauls in that territory might be weaker than they expected, but Eris objected and quickly withdrew his sword, and said that they were almost indistinguishable from ordinary golems, but when he tried to slash another one, he realized that their newly acquired weapon was truly too strong. It seemed that his personal development was ahead of his current understanding, and he decided to tackle everything at once, claiming that facing them alone simply would not be an effective strategy. Scylla doubted whether the Golems could really all approach them at once, and Eris decided to simply show what he was capable of instead of explaining. Quickly creating a magic circle, he subtly spread magic over a large area and swiftly captured the positions of all the surrounding enemies. Then he successfully targeted the remaining 8 golems and used enchantment magic to make them frightening. When those monstrous golems aggressively approached, Eris calmly said that now she could handle such a number thanks to her current strength, and Celia was completely shocked that Eris's trick worked so flawlessly. In a very short time, she smoothly swung her sword and easily and instantly defeated all the golems, leaving Eruz impressed. He praised her, saying that in 2 days she had improved the technique he taught her during the hunt for that monstrous bird, and she did it holding the sword for the first time. Moreover, he told her that these were only the basics, and there was still much to learn ahead, which truly surprised Celia. When he placed the remains of the defeated golems into the inventory slot, he noticed that she absorbed power much better than he expected. As they began to retreat, Oris called Sylph, told her to return, and added that she really gathered a lot of small items, but when he looked at them more closely, he found a guild card of a woman named Yukina Rembrandt, indicating the profession of a sage, the same woman who was desperately searching for her guild card. Eris explained to Celia about the sages, explaining that it was one of those unique professions that stood alongside the sword-bearers. Celia calmly asked if they also knew how to use a sword like she did, but he denied it. It was further explained that the sage was a master of magic, especially offensive spells, and showed incredible talent. She enthusiastically asked about the chances that 2 different jobs could cooperate, and explained that both their professions required unique talents and were important for the country. He suggested immediately returning to the guild and reporting this important news, then gently patted Sulph on the head and thanked her for the invaluable help. In the guild house, Yukina was still desperately searching for the lost guild card and doubted if she would ever be able to get it back. She also inquired about the fee for reissuing, and the receptionist said it was a considerable sum of 10,000 jewels. When stress began to noticeably overwhelm her, Eris's team arrived with calming news and informed her that they had taken her guild card on the way. Yukina was very happy to see her lost guild card and also asked if her wallet was there. Unfortunately, Ors said they only had the guild card at the moment. She said that her wallet was snatched, and the thief simply threw away the cards. She felt great relief when she found him and said she wanted to somehow thank him for the help. Eris calmed her down so she wouldn't worry, but she firmly replied that this would not happen because she could be taken to another place and seriously abused. Eris realized that there really are dubious dealers who illegally trade guild cards, and the risks turned out to be even higher than he initially imagined. Then she boldly said that she had no cash. Therefore, she would gladly repay him with her body. The remark left Eris completely confused and stunned, and when Celia innocently asked what she meant, Eris stammered and could not explain anything. Sensing that it was still a bit early for Celia to understand such delicate matters, he turned to Yukina, with concern hinting that she should pay a little more attention to her surroundings before saying such phrases. But she sincerely said that she would gladly stand up for him when the opportunity arises. She sincerely offered that she would also be glad to repay him for his kindness. But he stammered and could not form a proper sentence in front of her. She frowned and quietly told herself that they seemed to consider her a burden, a person who would hardly help in battle. Oris was truly surprised by her remark, but she explained that she meant exactly what she said and firmly assured them that she was ready to give her heart and soul to help with any request. At that moment, Eris was stunned to realize the innocent meaning of her careless words, felt relief, and awkwardly said that he was very glad of her offer to help, while Yukina asked what suddenly embarrassed him so much. Then Yukina suddenly remembered what had happened earlier. She carelessly said something and felt her face flush with shame, could not look him straight in the eyes at all, and could not believe she had just said that in front of a complete stranger. She admitted that she was wrong and said that she really should choose her words more carefully, and Eris kindly advised not to dwell on it for too long. Meanwhile, Celia was completely unaware of this awkward situation and enthusiastically warmly invited Yukina to join their company to set off on exciting adventures together. And all 3 immediately introduced themselves to each other. Eris said he was eager to see Yukina's skills in action, and she with the same enthusiasm decided to test his abilities. Eris announced that he would take control of the designated testing ground, and the administrator gladly offered to lead them to the training site. At the testing ground, Yukina gladly declared that she would show her powerful magical strength, and Eris noticed that she looked very confident. Preparing skillfully to cast a spell, she quickly activated offensive magic, a fiery beam, and released a lightning-fast beam that completely burned the straw scarecrow. Celia was impressed by her display of power, and Eris praised her flawless fire might, while surveying the entire testing ground. Yukina doubted whether the exam venue had always been so strict, but she had no idea that the reason for this neglected appearance was standing right next to her. The receptionist later told her everything that happened on the day Oris took the exam. She also handed Oris 300,000 gems for completing the quest and bringing a total of 10 golems. The sum would be split between Eris and Scylla, each receiving 150,000. Yukina was stunned to hear about such a large amount. Scylla modestly said that none of these achievements belonged to her. Moreover, Eris received 70 guild points and even rose to the rank of Adventurer D. Meanwhile, Yukina fell completely silent upon hearing that it took him only 2 quests to rise from rank E to rank D. Just then her stomach loudly growled, pushing the heiress to suggest that they go to the cafeteria and have lunch before moving on. To his surprise, she replied with a sad expression that she had no money at all. He had eaten nothing since the previous day, and it really shocked him. Scylla, with a determined look, firmly took her hand and said that she couldn't fight on an empty stomach, insisting that she would treat her to lunch. Soon they entered the noisy cafeteria, and Yukina devoured all the dishes placed before her as if she hadn't eaten in a long time, while Oris watched her amazing appetite. Yukina praised the delicious dish with a smile and sincerely thanked both. In turn, Celia praised her incredible appetite. This made Eris wonder how she dared to say that to her face. Celia and Yukina seemed to get along well. Eurus thought that Yukina looked like just an ordinary girl despite her unusual job, so he started asking her questions because he believed that she had received numerous offers from various groups. Because of her respected status as a wise woman, he also asked which team she was currently in, but she replied that she was traveling alone and simply could not adapt to the team she had been in before. She said that they simply imagined the future differently, and he thought that was a fairly common reason for a breakup. Celia then asked if Yukina had a deeper reason for being so particular about her future. She said she was looking for 7 volumes of magic scattered around the world. Eris sought confirmation whether the legendary tome existed that allows one to cast various spells simply by reading it. She replied that only those truly worthy could do that. Eris noted that it was indeed a treasure that only the wise could truly master. She added that Kay was a famous magic researcher and showed a neatly and clearly written collection of notes, explaining that these were his research records with important clues for his spell books. When Eris asked who it was about, she said it was her father, who died when she was still a child. She resolutely promised that she would definitely collect everything while she was alive, and Celia asked why she was making such extraordinary efforts. The reason was that her mother, who had always cared for her attentively, had recently died. And when Yukina, confused by loss and the unexpected feeling of freedom, came across her father's forgotten research, Eris now understood why she had so passionately collected these spell books, and realized that she had been carrying quite a heavy emotional burden. Yukina also told him about her sincere desire to unlock the magic of resurrection after collecting all 7 volumes. Embarrassed and confused, he asked if she wanted to resurrect her parents, and she admitted that it was part of her motivation. What worried her most was that she might lose someone dear again. Iris called her kind, but she modestly considered herself rather a coward. Eris understood very well the unbearable pain of losing a loved one, and he was sure that he would have done exactly the same if he were in her place. But strangely, Yukina was connected not only by the death of her parents. Her sincere desire to master the magic of resurrection testified to her compassionate nature. She was truly a brave girl who genuinely lived up to the high title of sage. And the more Eris thought about her unwavering determination, the more he wanted her to be by his side. He believed that if she could unlock her vast talent, she would become an invaluable ally for them, because without her, his dream of defeating the Demon King would be impossible. Having many important thoughts in his head, he asked if she wanted to officially join their party. He invited her to join his team, saying that together they could defeat the Demon King and at the same time fulfill her dream of traveling the world and collecting ancient artifacts. Collecting magical tones from all over the world perfectly matched Yukina's aspirations, so he thought it was a good idea. Although she acknowledged that it was a kind offer, she politely declined when asked about the reason. She said that she simply was not suited for hero parties and preferred to act independently rather than in a group. Eris politely agreed, noting that forming a party is not always simple and pleasant. Moreover, she said that with every clash against powerful monsters, there is a high chance they would part ways forever, hinting at the possible loss of a comrade, and the talk was about the most powerful demon lord himself, which only strengthened her resolve. Over the last millennium, countless squads bravely challenged the forces of the Demon Lord, but each time they ultimately suffered defeat and left ruins behind. Having felt this, Oris wanted to find out the real reason and asked if she was really afraid of losing her dear allies, to which she confirmed without hesitation. She added that although she believed that Or's party would not perish so easily, she still could not get rid of deep anxiety. Although he admitted that a newcomer would hardly survive if they directly challenged the Demon King, he resolutely said that he would prove that they do not take reckless risks. Celia intervened and said that she would do everything to impress Yukina and convince her to join their party. Moreover, Eris suggested that Yukina go with them to see how they perform the tasks and be able to respond to them more decisively. Starting with you, they could finally take on the D-rank quest. The difference between E and D rank was a completely different world both in difficulty and prestige, with one D rank member being roughly equivalent to 10 from E rank. However, Celia doubted whether they were really ready to take on this quest, because it was a high-level D quest, and their difficult task was to destroy 30 salamanders. Fierce lizard-like monsters living on the plains, with strong jaws and powerful paws. Even an ordinary adventurer has no chance in a group. However, Eris confidently said that they could not just waste their precious time and strength on weak monsters if they really wanted to show their combined power. It was then that Aros heard in his thoughts the voice of Silt, who asked if she could leave that world and if she had already manifested. Yukina was surprised to see the delicate child, who mentally noted that fresh air always invigorates, and greeted Yukina. It prompted Celia to remark that Sylph could still watch everything, even when he was hiding in the spirit world. Noticing a stranger, Sylph playfully circled around Yukina, and Yukina wondered who this child was. Eris introduced herself as a spirit and asked Yukina to be gentle with Sylph because Sylph had gone through a difficult time. Although Aruz initially hesitated to show Sylph in front of Yukina, he knew he could not hide her forever if he truly intended to accept Yukina into his party. The scene smoothly shifted to the Bergen forest near the plains, where Eris casually suggested to Scylla to first destroy the enemy, and Scylla, stunned by the unexpected instruction. She ran up to him and hugged him tightly, desperately trying to cancel his decision, which made Eris blush a little. Although he knew she could handle it herself, he worried that due to nervousness she would not show all her skills, and meanwhile Yukina quietly whispered to Sylph, noticing their behavior, that it seemed they were a couple. Still blushing a little, Eris gently assured Celia that they were finally partners, and he would definitely come to her aid if she ever found herself in danger. Celia's behavior immediately improved when she heard his reassuring words and immediately agreed to follow his orders. Soon Celia bravely stood before the threatening monster, ready to strike. When the monster detected her presence, she rushed at the beast without hesitation, but its evasion speed was slightly higher than that of opponents at E rank, and in a simple speed duel, Celia was at a disadvantage. However, as a holy sword, she had exceptional reflexes and sharp instincts. And in hand-to-hand combat, predicting the opponent's movements was crucial for victory. Celia's quick reaction allowed her to dodge the monster's attack in time, and when the monster lunged at her with lightning speed, she easily dealt with them with fast, precise strikes. When Celia finally threw back the salamander monster, Oris praised her for her impressive skill, and Yukina was left speechless upon seeing such a display of power. He turned to Yukina and asked if she was surprised and still shaken. She inquired how long Celia had trained to reach such a level of mastery. To her surprise, he said that Scylla had started special training only a few days ago and still had a lot of room for development. This completely stunned Yukina, and then it was Eris's turn to show his honed skills and incredible abilities. He explained that their team acted cohesively and always carefully planned their strategy before battle. If Celia cut down enemies with her sword, he quickly destroyed monsters with magic. In his assessment, their formidable group together corresponded to C-rank adventurers. This meant they could confidently demonstrate their skills against C-rank level tasks or even higher, but during his enthusiastic story about the powerful group, Yukina tried to intervene and say something important, but he ignored her words. His mind was completely absorbed by the unwavering determination to prove that none of their comrades would die, directly touching her deepest fear of losing dear allies in her carefully planned first step. He cast a powerful enhancement on himself and simultaneously directed a weakening spell at the enemy horde. He then planned to release Hellfire, a destructive version of the spell Prominence, which would force the fireballs to collide harshly and explode with tremendous force, and this fusion would usually require an incredible amount of magical energy that even very skilled mages could rarely produce together. However, thanks to his unique enchantment magic, he could effectively change the very nature of the spell and thereby create its full power on his own. Although Eris was so absorbed in showing Yukina his incredible power that he did not hear a single word she said. Although he admitted that they two would not come out unscathed, he wisely created a barrier to protect them from any lurking danger while carefully executing his plan. A strong explosion that grew swept across the entire area and instantly destroyed all the monsters. However, when the dust from the explosion settled and Eris looked around to check on Yukina, he found that she had fainted and fallen to the ground. Later, when Yukina regained consciousness, Eris doubted whether she had truly seen his abilities in action, acknowledging that he might have overdone it a bit to convince her of his power. Meanwhile, she recognized Celia's strength, but said that Eris was on a completely different level. At the same time, she thought she did not belong to their company and would only drag everyone down, but without hesitation, Celia intervened. She also admitted that at first she felt like a burden when she first met Eris, but Yukina responded that Celia's experience in the group and her persistent training mattered a lot. But she was embarrassed when Eris said that Celia had also been a lonely traveler before she met him. He added that he could recognize people with real potential well and asked Yukina to trust his judgment a little, because it seemed he had already managed to convince her. He suggested she try to catch a salamander herself, and Yukina agreed without any complaints. And when she created a glowing magical sphere in her hand, she unleashed a powerful creature on the monster, but she failed to knock it down with one shot, so she quickly fired another beam and finally destroyed the creature. Watching as she demonstrated her magical powers, he said that both quality and quantity were excellent. She had real talent, but she still had room to grow. He explained that usually mastering magic required relentless training, and although intuition and experience gained through hard work were undoubtedly important, there was also a clever trick here. He used the same magic and the same techniques as she did, releasing a much more powerful burst that easily destroyed several salamanders at once. He returned the fearsome claws of the fallen monsters as proof of the hunt, and explained that he left the initial magical power at the same level as hers, only adding a few advanced techniques. Instead, Yukina stood with her jaw dropped in amazement when she came across a magical front cover 3 times larger than her own. He explained the technique step by step so that she fully understood. Starting with fire beams, he added that all complex magic is essentially a combination of simple spells, but during such combination, a significant part of the magical energy is lost. So if they strengthened this connection, they would easily eliminate the losses. She quickly understood his explanation and added that during transformation, almost 70% of the initial power is lost, but Oris was confident that she could support all this magic and almost triple its power. She still considered these only theoretical assumptions and doubted whether it would work in practice. He answered her simply and directly that she could use binding magic to easily combine spells, and she then clarified whether he was going to activate it additionally and whether this would increase magic consumption. He denied it and with a light flick of his finger summoned a tiny spark, saying that it does not create new fire or water, but only uses a fraction of the magic needed for ignition. But when she asked about the exact combination of binding magic, his answer stunned her when he said that he considered it simple magic. He added that in his previous group, the participants were used to buffs from several people, stacking simultaneously as if it were a common thing. Then Self kindly intervened and subtly reminded the bewildered women that it was like overturning the usual, almost magical common sense. He took a stick, drew an approximate silhouette of a person on the ground, and showed a complex magical diagram inside it. He explained that this diagram can be imagined as a binary system, 1 when active and 0 when inactive. He continued that all magic can be built from combinations of zeros and ones. With the increase in the number of branches, they could turn on and off individual segments. The complex concept finally began to dawn on her, and she said that magic would theoretically have a total of 48,816 combinations if the number of branches increased. Her face changed when she realized that with just 10 branches there were over 1,000 combinations, and with 20 over 1,000,000, and as if all magic could be explained by these complex combinations. A spark of determination appeared in her eyes, and she quickly flipped through the pages of the book. Then she tried all the magical spells, using the newly understood precious combinations of zeros and ones. Her face lit up with excitement when she realized she could master countless applications and that the possibilities were almost limitless, and this excitement reminded Eris that she was truly a talented scientist's daughter. She then asked for confirmation, clarifying that it was no longer necessary to collect spellbooks for resurrection magic. However, Harris politely declined and said that what he deciphered was only part of how magic really works. Especially in matters of ancient magic, there remained things he could not fully explain, so he sought to demonstrate the power of binding magic. He carefully wrote combinations of zeros and ones on the ground, and advised her to try this exact order first. When Yukina agreed, she created 2 simple spells and flawlessly used binding magic to combine them exactly as she was taught. Then she unleashed a barrage of large, fierce fireballs, creating a huge explosion that she had never managed before. Genuine admiration shone on her face when she saw that she controlled her true powers, and soon after she cleared the entire area of formidable monsters. They were returning when Eris sincerely thanked Yukina for her much-needed help, and she modestly replied that she owed him, because she would have done it twice as long by herself. Moreover, she asked slightly uncertainly if they would officially agree to accept her into their group, and their faces immediately lit up with joy. Celia hugged her tightly and joyfully. Meanwhile, she noted with satisfaction that she now had a new mom. Eris warmly welcomed her at their party, and Yukina assured them that she would do everything possible to help with her. At the guild house, the receptionist was genuinely surprised that Yukina, who had previously been so reluctant to join groups, finally joined one, and Celia said with admiration that Eris really knows how to attract people. The receptionist examined the claws they returned with, which served as proof of their hunt, but although it was enough, it did not impress her much. However, Yukina admitted that the magic taught to her by the hears was so powerful that it accidentally dissolved in water. The remains of those terrible salamanders. The receptionist said that Eris really teaches wonderfully, but added that both Celia and Yukina simply have a lot of talent. Allowing them to learn much faster, he believed that a narrow perspective could not truly reveal a person's full talent. If you focus only on the nearby, they will not see the distant moon. Removing the self-imposed limits on their focus, they would even clearly see that distant moon. Yukina found this analogy quite amazing. In addition, she asked if they had already chosen a name for the party, but he said they had not yet decided on a suitable name, taking this into account. Eris quickly registered the name of her party, Infinity, after long consideration. Soon they finally ate, and Eris asked about her housing, and Yukina said that that morning she had no money to continue the rent. Without hesitation, Celia offered her to stay in their room for now, and Yukina, hearing this, asked if they would really be in the same room. When she looked at him with a clearly questioning expression, he, stammering a little, said it was only because of Celia's persistence. Although Yukina agreed to stay, Eris thought that they definitely should move to a bigger inn soon. At that moment, suspicious people in hoods suddenly approached them, saying that Yukina had lost her guild card. But when she checked, it was clearly not hers. To their surprise, the figures quickly grabbed Celia and held her hostage, pressing a knife to her neck. One of the threatening men then ordered Eris to raise his hands and come quietly. Eris asked why they suddenly appeared. Yukina replied that those thugs might be traders of guild cards on the black market, and seeing that she hit the mark, one of them admitted that she was quite perceptive. She indifferently noted that it was obvious, because only someone with another's guild card would engage in such suspicious activities. Eris immediately remembered that boy and wondered if they came to avenge their fallen comrade, but the bandit said that Eris was not very clever in this matter. He revealed that the boy was just a pawn, planned to be used and discarded. What happened to him did not concern them. He sharply said that Eris's report about them caused big problems, and Eris, showing no anxiety, replied that they would be ready for the consequences of conducting dubious business in the capital. This irritated the thug even more, and he said that he could simply sell 2 beautiful girls to Arista to cover their losses, and that Eris would surely regret making them their enemies, but Eris calmly said that they were the ones who made a critical mistake. At that very moment, Scylla and Yukina regained their sword and magical power respectively, and quickly detained those bandits with almost no resistance. Their bewildered leader was left stunned, seeing the lightning-fast reaction of those women, but Eris cunningly grabbed him from behind. He said that Celia and Yukina were simply too strong for his minions. Having tied all 3 of them with a tight rope, he ordered Celia to call the royal guard. Meanwhile, the leader hastily offered Eris more money than the guild paid him if he went with them. However, Eurus simply admitted that he had received nothing at all from the guild for his actions. In fact, Eris chose a peaceful society without any illegal trade on the black market. He also stated that he works for his own benefit and principles, not just for money. Shortly after arriving at the inn, Celia asked why Eris did not help her when the bandit took her hostage, and Eris replied that he thought she could handle them herself and did not need help. But her face still had a pouty expression, and she slyly steered the conversation in another direction. Eris announced that they needed to discuss the distribution of rewards. In response, Yukina said that the contribution criteria were confusing, and usually they distributed rewards depending on each person's contribution. Harris thought that although dealing damage is usually more profitable for attackers, support roles according to his principles should also receive proper rewards. Arrest announced that he would allocate 10% for party expenses and distribute the rest equally among themselves. However, Yukina immediately objected to his decision, claiming that it would be unfair to him because he undoubtedly contributed more in the battle. Even with this decision, it was more than he received in the days when he was in the hero party. Eris simply replied that everything would eventually even out if they both became equally stronger. Inspired by his words, the two women felt a surge of motivation and agreed to work hard together. Eris suggested that as group members, they jointly cover living expenses and consider moving to a new, larger hotel. At that moment, Yukina immediately pointed to the cradle and hurriedly asked if Eris and Scylla really lay together in the same cradle, and Scylla confirmed without hesitation. She also said that he often clung to her so tightly in his sleep that it was hard for her to break free, and Eris still could not believe that he really did that to her while she was asleep. Meanwhile, Yukina comfortably settled on the velvet couch and admitted that she had not had such a lively night and energetic day for a long time. Eris then gently stroked her head, but immediately felt sidelong glances directed at him, and meeting Celia's gaze, did not know what to say to justify his action. Jealous of Yukina, she fell onto the bed and suddenly asked him to stroke her the same way, and he stood stunned. Having no choice, he squeezed between them and immediately felt their soft bodies pressing against him, causing him to blush with embarrassment. The next morning, Yukina greeted him, and noticing his expression, said that he probably had little rest the previous night. Only Eris knew the real reason why he could not rest properly. Soon they reached the dining hall, where a large crowd had gathered because a notice was hanging on the gates stating that the dining hall was closed due to a critical shortage of ingredients. As soon as Eris went inside, he immediately felt a disgusting stench throughout the room. They went further and saw that all the ingredients had spoiled, and the chef said that all the food had gone bad overnight. Noticing the spoiled food, Yukina immediately understood that it happened due to a malfunction in magic. The natural magic flowing through the earth sometimes became chaotic, and there was a high probability that it accidentally shifted into decay magic. As Eris continued to inspect the pantry, he could not believe that the entire stock had spoiled overnight. To everyone's surprise, Ors picked up a rotten apple and tried to bite it, which completely confused Scylla, but Yukina, thanks to her sharp senses, advised Scylla to look more closely. To her astonishment, the rotten apple miraculously turned into a fresh one. Eris then realized that he could use his restoration spell to return the food to its state from the previous night, and with one smooth gesture, the entire spoiled area instantly restored to its former appearance. The expression on the chef's face, who had been sad before, immediately changed to genuine joy. He sincerely thanked him, and when asked how he could repay him, Eris simply replied that the best reward would be truly delicious food, but Eris had spent so much life energy that he staggered and barely stayed on his feet, so Celia and Yukina quickly ran to help him. Yukina said that his magical reserves were definitely exhausted after such a powerful spell, so Ferd advised him to eat properly and rest well to recover quickly. Seeing that the matter was urgent, the chief immediately ordered his colleagues to help him prepare restorative dishes without delay. After some time, they comfortably settled at the dining table, and Yukina said with slight surprise that even Eris could run out of magic, to which he modestly replied that he was human too, just like them. Moreover, he sincerely asked the head chef not to tell others how he miraculously revived the ingredients, but the chief said it was a great opportunity to become famous. Meanwhile, Celia proudly said that it was precisely his modesty that made him so cool. In response, Eris explained that if this widespread magical disruption really affected the entire area, it was probably in very bad shape, and it was simply impossible for him to restore everything from all sides alone. Therefore, the chief agreed to keep it a secret when they finally left the dining room, and Yukina said she couldn't believe it because all the ingredients spoiled at the same time, then admitting that the magical disruption was very alarming. It was said that the magical fury of the earth was a harbinger of a magical disaster and would likely cause serious consequences. They went to the guild house, and surprisingly, the entire guild was gathered before them, and the receptionist joyfully reported that Eruz had easily restored the spoiled ingredients and that clear traces of magical enchantment were found. Harris stood stunned and could not believe it because everyone suddenly learned about his enchanting abilities. However, one of the members said that he had heard rumors about a new wizard who would join the team of heroes. Eris immediately took advantage of this timely distraction and declared that person a true magician, temporarily avoiding trouble. Then he quickly turned to his party members and suggested they immediately look for new requests. Moreover, he felt relieved because someone had already taken his place in the hero team, and now he was finally free from being constantly followed by former team members. As soon as they went inside, they were surprised to see very few request forms on the wall and allowed guessed that this could have happened due to a recent magical disturbance. Although when Eris tried to get a form, they all heard aloud. From outside came a sinister dull thud, and they were completely surprised. Eris immediately decided to check what had happened, but due to the dense crowd, nothing was visible. They decided to go upstairs and observe from above. To his horror, he came across a newly built guerrilla dungeon, ominously equipped with a timer. If the magical barrier breaks in just 3 hours, the terrible consequence will be that monsters will flood the entire village. Eris said sadly that this was the same dungeon that tragically appeared in his hometown 6 years ago. Although the hero and reinforcements from the capital eventually suppressed it then, it only happened after the entire village was completely destroyed. This time, Eruz decided to evacuate every living creature first, because he sincerely wanted to value each life more, and quickly devised a plan to transport everyone to the neighboring village within the critical 3 hours. When Celia and Yukina began to retreat, he activated his detection magic throughout the area, and granted everyone increased movement speed. Immediately after that, a lightness overcame the group, and they started running much faster. Surprised, Yukina asked if he really gave everyone such a powerful spell, and Eris replied that it was no problem for him. 6 years ago, he decided that if such a tragedy happened again, he would do everything to prevent it at any cost. At that moment, the administrator appeared and warned about the sudden appearance of a dungeon, asking to immediately send a hunting squad, although it was obvious that Eris's squad would depart. He said they did not want to be just a hunting group, but aimed to act as an advance squad, and she, surprised by his bold request, doubted whether he really wanted to act alone and advised not to be too reckless, even if he had great powers. He explained that these monsters did not act in packs, so it was necessary to fight single enemies, and concluded that a small elite team was much more effective than a large ordinary hunting group. He also said that he was not really alone, meaning that his dear comrades Celia and Yukina would support him. The receptionist asked them to be careful, and Eurus ordered his people to quickly get all the necessary potions. Before moving deeper into the crowd to help, to his surprise, members of his former party unexpectedly arrived, and Nardo informed them that the civilians would follow them, but Yukina intervened and said that there was no such rule and they had not yet received any specific orders from the capital. However, with some confidence, Nardo declared that they were the ones in command. Irritated by his cheeky remark, Oris called him incredible for still thinking so highly of himself and added that in fact they were the leaders. Nardo sharply responded, accusing them of selfishly wanting to take all the recognition for themselves. He then assured that if that was really the case, he would immediately go to the dungeon. Other members wisely assured Nardo that there was no need to hurry, as they still did not even have enough supplies. Despite this, Nardo decisively ordered his comrades to move forward and enter the dungeon. Yukina said that it would be extremely humiliating for the hero squad to fall behind in conquering the dungeon, and Eris sincerely pitied the new blessing mage, who would now have to support them. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeon, while the group of heroes was engaged in a fierce, chaotic battle with terrible monsters, Nardo shouted that the damage they suffered was as serious as if they were completely defenseless. He angrily demanded to know what was happening, and the new mage replied that he was giving all his strength and that the enhancement magic was fully working on him, but Nardo instinctively said that Yurui's had always done much more than he could now. Another participant intervened, advising Nardo not to quarrel with his comrade, and sternly warned that he would definitely suffer if he carelessly relaxed. United in a desperate surge, the group used their various skills and magical abilities to defeat the monsters inside and fought recklessly. Naruto managed to corner the terrible creature and immediately ordered Cryani to use her powerful offensive magic. But she was already healing another wounded comrade with her precious healing magic. The creature sharply swung its massive tail, and Nardo flew forcefully across the ground. Meanwhile, Krenit reported with obvious tension that they had completely run out of magical power. The new member doubted whether there was an antidote at all, because the basilisk's poison was deadly and acted too quickly. Due to carelessness, Nardo got saliva from the disguised monster dripping right in front of him on his exposed arm, causing a strong reaction with rapid swelling. He desperately begged someone to give him an antidote potion, but Crane said with concern that they had completely run out of healing potions and wisely advised to immediately leave the dungeon. Moreover, the new mage said he would have brought more supplies if he had known about such serious consequences. Soon Eris's party confidently entered the dungeon, and Yukina quietly hoped that the hero party would not complain when they saw them. In response, Eris said they should not allow themselves the luxury of complaining. At that moment, a terrible sound echoed through the dungeon, instantly alerting everyone present. When they went further, they saw that the heroes were in even worse condition than before, and noticed the terrible basilisk. Oris admitted that they should have arrived a little earlier. Activating his magic circle, Eris quickly fired an armor-piercing shot, and directed the blazing beam at the creature, rendering it completely immobile. Celia and Yukina again praised his powerful skills, and the former members of his group were left completely stunned and speechless upon seeing this. Prana called him unfair for quietly leaving the party, and now boasting such impressive combat magic. In response, he calmly uttered the same harsh words that Naruto had said to him, adding that the dismissal was already decided and there would be no explanations. He also reported that Flame Pearson's shot was an advanced application of blessing magic, which he first tried after Exile. When he took an important healing potion from the inventory slot and said that it was exactly what they desperately needed at this critical moment, Nardo's face lit up with joy. Celia wondered if Eurus had anticipated this situation in advance and prepared the necessary potions. Eurus simply explained that the guerrilla dungeon was a very isolated place where magic was quickly depleted, and most monsters were elemental and extremely aggressive. If they lacked potions, they could be struck by deadly poison or paralysis, and ordinary healing would hardly help, leaving them dangerously immobile. With a firm expression, he admitted that it was his first time entering this dungeon, and the local environment and combat techniques of the inhabitants were completely unfamiliar to him, further advising them to act prudently in everything they did. He gestured to them to move forward and precisely indicated the direction of the exit portal. To his surprise, Nardo addressed him directly and seriously, emphasizing that he truly counted on him. Garis had never imagined that the day would come when he would hear such words from Nardo, and thought that Nardo had probably finally faced harsh reality, which was why he was so unexpectedly honest. In a decisive tone, Eris assured him to leave everything under her care. As they were leaving, Celia asked with keen interest whether Oris already knew the exact features and types of monsters in that dungeon, and Oris apologized to both of them for dragging them into such danger. And he was also very worried that the once world-famous team of heroes was now in such a state. Yukina grumbled that they were so obsessed with appearance that they couldn't even protect their comrades. But Eris calmly replied that this was still his old territory. Hearing this, Yukina was surprised because she realized that he really was from the same group of heroes, and Eurus realized that he had never told her about it before. He immediately apologized to Yukina if his past had somehow made her uncomfortable. However, she calmly replied that she was rather relieved that he, like her, was an outsider, and that she liked him as he was, not just because he was a hero. Eris's face noticeably flushed at her words, and her cheeks also reddened as she hurriedly explained that she meant as a person. It was then that Celia suddenly appeared between them, causing both to flinch and be surprised, pointed forward and said that there would be many doors at their destination. As they passed by those numerous doors, Celia asked if they could just quickly open any doors. However, Oris assured her. At the same time, activated his area scanning ability, which immediately revealed a swarm of dangerous monsters behind those doors. Yukina said that they definitely would not make it if they opened all the doors, and Ciliate advised just to keep going for now. They went a little further and came across magnificent doors with several keyholes. They thought that the dungeon boss was hiding deeper behind this powerful barrier, and they would need many keys to open the doors. Due to the large number of lock holes, it was clear that the keys were specially hidden behind those numerous doors, one behind each. Celia said that they had no choice but to defeat the monsters at each gate, and as they moved toward the gates, Eris hurriedly stopped them. He accidentally pulled Ekina's belt. Blushing, she immediately warned him not to grab her in such a place. Since they needed to collect 20 keys, Oris explained that they did not have time for such a lengthy process. The simple way did not work, so Celia wondered if there was some hidden method to open those doors. But Eris discovered that it was much easier than they had imagined. He formed a powerful magic circle and unleashed a huge fiery explosion right at the formidable door, instantly breaking it with sheer force. Meanwhile, Celia and Yukina were completely bewildered by his action, as they did not expect him to resort to such brute force. When the door opened, a formidable and terrifying dragon appeared before them. Without wasting a second, Aristocler immediately drew Dragon's attention to himself. He quickly ordered Skilly to attack from the rear, and Yukini to skillfully support them from behind. The massive jaws of Dragon opened wide and released a powerful stream of fire that engulfed everything around, and Eris instantly appeared behind and fired an accurate shot that pierced the flames. It was truly a formidable beast, but there was not a single scratch on its incredibly hard scales, and Silly, as ordered, came out from behind and struck the monster accurately with her sturdy sword. However, when Eris praised her skill, Dragon cunningly took advantage of the moment and grabbed her while she was distracted. Overcome with panic, Eris quickly prepared for another desperate attack, but Yukina sharply ordered Celia to dodge. At the same time, she unleashed a powerful offensive magic towards Dragon. Celia was saved, and Drayden lay wounded. Momentarily motionless on the ground, Eris took the opportunity to rush at the beast and deliver a precise first strike, and the formidable Dragon was finally defeated. Their victory was announced throughout the region. They stood outside with relief because they had finally cleared the dungeon, while Eris simultaneously cast a calming restorative spell on them. Yukina, together with Proud, stated that this is undoubtedly the fastest record in history when Eros passed such a complex dungeon so quickly. However, he said with a warm smile that he definitely did not achieve this alone and that all three of them overcame it together, acting as a coordinated team. He admitted that if not for Silly's precisely aimed attack on Dragon's scale, he would not have noticed his weakness. And without timely help, Yukina Celia admitted that she would have been torn to pieces. Yukina, stammering, modestly said that she had done nothing special and had simply attacked from behind, but Eris still praised her for the extremely necessary help, causing her cheeks to blush with embarrassment. He also emphasized that in the dungeon, where magic was used very intensively, there were almost no adventurers who could effectively attack with magic from such a distance. He gently took her hand and offered a magical spell for restoration, and she shyly expressed sincere gratitude. Jealous of their connection, Celia hurriedly inserted herself between them and firmly grabbed Eris, dramatically declaring that she was in pain and urgently needed his help. Meanwhile, Yukina could not help but giggle at the lively energy at their bright party. She quietly addressed her deceased parents, mentally deciding that she would really get along well with these people, and then suddenly something appeared out of nowhere. She gently thanked both her mothers, Celia and Yukina, for allowing her to go outside, because it seemed that everyone had already been successfully evacuated from the village. Self-jokingly said that she could finally steal whatever she wanted, but Celia quickly scolded her for such thoughts. Eris also pondered that she had immersed herself in such dangerous thoughts because of someone who seemed like an innocent child. Seeing them so close, he jokingly said that Eris had successfully stolen the hearts of her mothers, but with red cheeks clarified that their closeness was simply an effective way of magical restoration. She also told him that although it was normal for Celia, it was extremely rude for Yukina. Her face was as red as a beet, but Eris tried to explain to herself that it might be due to exhaustion from magic fatigue. At that moment, Yukina sharply turned around and assured him that she was fine now. Meanwhile, Eurus explained to Sulf that there really was some distance between him and Yukina. Scylla called him hopelessly inattentive, while he believed that cooperation with Yukina was only for their common goals. That day, after conquering the infamous partisan dungeon, they took another important step toward their great goal of restoring peace to the world. He thought that together with Celia and Yukina, he had to continue growing in order to eventually defeat the mighty Demon King. Instead, the royal guards quietly talked in the corner of the village, doubting whether the heroes should have retreated, while others suggested immediately reporting everything to the palace. The scene smoothly shifted to the royal palace of the Male Kingdom, where the venerable King Floyd proposed appointing a new hero who would be an ideal and truly unique for their nation. The minister replied that even if they were heroes of the Alliance, finding adventures that surpassed them was a real challenge. However, Floyd confidently said that the existence of such extraordinary people had already been proven. 3 days after the Eurus group defeated the dangerous partisan dungeon, they went to a bustling market, and the shop owner immediately recognized them as heroes who had just overcome a crisis. She leaned closer and asked if Eris was really a former hero and whether it should have been kept secret, after which Eris realized that almost everyone had already guessed about his past. Celia asked for 4 loaves of bread, and the shop owner, seeing her, was clearly impressed and called her a beauty. Jokingly, she asked if she was Eris's girl, which noticeably embarrassed Eris, but Celia calmly denied it and proudly introduced herself as the swordswoman of the group. Hearing this, Letty generously gave her the whole bag of bread instead of just 4, and a joyful expression immediately appeared on Celius's face. Another seller also joined in, stating that the village had miraculously come to life thanks to their heroic efforts, and even the fruits had become much juicier. Yukina, always scholarly, explained that closing the dungeon had significantly stabilized the local magical flow, and the merchant praised her knowledge and asked who she was. Eris appeared, proudly introduced her as Wise, and reported that she had made a significant contribution to the group's recent success. The seller was very glad to hear this. He quickly offered her the juiciest fruits as a token of gratitude, and immediately the shop owners and sellers throughout the market showered them with gifts and sincere thanks. Both Celia and Yukina seemed to genuinely enjoy the attention and gratitude they received, as the seller noted. The Nardo group said they confidently walked through the village, but when the decisive moment came, they quickly retreated, and someone added that the Eris group is much more reliable. The entire market sincerely thanked them on behalf of everyone for their timely and decisive help. Later, when they finally got out of the large crowd, Hera sighed with relief, which prompted Eugenia to ask if he was tired. He claimed that he had never had such an experience before, so he was not used to such public attention. Moreover, when they arrived at the guild, the receptionist immediately apologized for calling abruptly when he was supposed to be resting, but Eurus replied that he had rested enough over the past 3 days and asked about the urgent matter for which she summoned him. She informed him that she had an important letter addressed specifically to Eris and ordered him to go to the inner room. At that moment, Eris realized that his past as a former hero was now known to everyone, and while the receptionist was leading them, Celia remarked that usually people are not allowed here. But the receptionist informed them that this was their private office. She informed the group that after the quick completion of the dungeon mission yesterday, a letter arrived directly from the capital. And due to the unusual speed of delivery, it was undoubtedly from a carrier pigeon, so for them, it was extremely important. When Eurus asked who it was from, she reported that the letter was from King Foy of the Kingdom of Men, and it surprised him greatly. When he looked at the letter, it clearly stated that the king personally congratulated them on the swift and decisive capture of the dungeon, and the letter also announced the upcoming dissolution of the United Party of Heroes and the simultaneous creation of a separate party of heroes exclusively for the male kingdom. The most important thing announced was that the respected leader of the new party of heroes will be Eris Full-Raised himself. Both Celia and Yukina were very happy to hear about this achievement because they believed that their incredible feats in the dungeon were finally officially recognized. Sylph also appeared at the scene and, smiling, said that although she was not very knowledgeable about such things, it really sounded impressive. The receptionist said that it is quite logical due to Eris's incredible achievements, but being personally nominated by the king is truly a great accomplishment. However, Celia said she did not understand why create a completely new party if you can simply include Eris in the existing one. In response, Yukina explained that the current party is only a coalition, effectively a multinational army funded by neighboring countries. But due to the prolonged absence of major battles with the mighty Demon King, more and more countries refused to invest money. And as a result, a serious lack of funding arose, which inevitably led to a decrease in the recruitment of talented adventurers. In addition, the situation has significantly worsened since a partisan dungeon appeared 6 years ago in Eris's hometown. Since natural disasters can now happen anywhere, countries prioritized responding to them instead of subduing the Demon King and began significantly investing in their urgent needs. Also, the receptionist reported that the allied hero party was abandoned after the recent retreat from the dungeon, and it seems the king decisively decided to create an independent hero party solely to protect the kingdom. Scylla seemed to have finally fully realized the seriousness of the situation and proudly declared that it was time for Eris, and Eris hesitantly called it a very positive interpretation. Moreover, he said that his ultimate goal was to defeat the mighty Demon King, and joining the hero squad would only be a temporary retreat. However, Iruz thought that the bitter and painful memories of the former hero group were very hard to forget. The receptionist suspected that something was bothering him and was surprised when Oros inquired if there was the slightest possibility to refuse the honorary nomination to the new hero party, and she clarified if he meant the role of leader. But he clarified that he meant becoming a hero in general, and this revelation stunned everyone in the room and caused silence. She was still noticeably shocked and stammered, saying that rejecting a royal order was unprecedented, and Celia and Eugenia desperately tried to convince him, arguing that refusing such an honor would be a huge loss. And he must still participate despite obvious hesitation. Meanwhile, Eris could not understand how to explain all his complicated feelings to everyone. Meanwhile, in the great audience hall of the male kingdom, Galeus Sheffield, Furrer Forrest, Sils Astria, and Miguel Bru were. The king, personally officially, appointed the new honorary heroes of the male kingdom. Then Floyd raised the question about the party leader. Galeus quickly calmed him down, saying that he could easily handle it because he had led an A-ranked team for many years and was confident in his leadership abilities. However, Floyd calmly said that the leader had already been finally chosen, although he was not there at the time. Galeus immediately apologized for the mistake and asked about the identity of the leader, to which Flaws said it was Eris Fullers. Galeus immediately recognized him as that skilled spellcaster from the former party of heroes, and it clearly surprised him, while Flaws cheerfully noted that although it had not yet been announced, he had heard that Joris single-handedly conquered the partisan dungeon. Floyd additionally proudly claimed that even after refusing the hero title, the heir was extremely eager to save people, and his spirit and inner strength were truly exceptional, and Floyd considered him especially worthy of such an honorable title. On the other hand, Galeus broke into a sweat when he realized that the leader of the hero team had enormous power. He knew that on behalf of the king, the leader would be given huge power and influence both within the party and outside it. Galeus could not understand why he was not chosen, since everyone recognized his skill and he had successfully led groups for many years. He considered it humiliating to come onto that big stage and work under the command of some guy named Eris. He was convinced that if he had been the first to encounter the dungeon, he would have been chosen as the leader, not Eris, and Fira asked if the group leader could change later. Floyd replied that although he was not thinking about it now, this topic might occasionally come up at court sessions, about once every few years. He informed that in a few days Eris would arrive at the capital and officially join them, so he ordered everyone to stay in standby until then. Galeus was increasingly outraged and thought that the king had simply used the retreat of the previous group of heroes as a convenient pretext and was now somewhat overestimating Ares. Moreover, he thought with deep indignation that if Eris simply did not exist, the king would have been forced to appoint him. When he set out beyond the capital, an evil curse appeared in his mind that he would do everything to get rid of Aruz, not even knowing what Aruz was really like.